one cares what you want right now, my dear. You're so silly.
I'm Jen, single mom, artist, and entrepreneur. This is my journey to building life by my design. Come along while Jen juggles it.
So, just to catch you up, it is a weekday and I have had a very, very busy day. It's about 3 o'clock now. I have about an hour before I have to go pick kids up. And I'm just now going to get to work on this glass stuff because I had 2 appointments this morning that didn't get done with until almost 11:30. And after that, I had to run to the public library here in town. They have once a quarter a library book sale. And my 15-year-old also has a small business. If you visited my Etsy shop, you'll see that there are upcycled journals in that shop, which my daughter makes. We source her books from lots of different places, but the library bag sale is definitely a primary place where we source her books from. Just so you can see what one of those looks like, this is one of them. So this was an old Joy of Cooking cookbook. She took the covers off, added paper, drilled holes, added binder rings, and it's been a cute little business for her. She started it when she was 12, and I'm really proud of her. She does mostly markets, like little local markets, and she's done really well with it. Bristol's coming to visit. So anyway, so I had to go pick up books because normally that bag sale happens on a Saturday and we'll just go together and spend the morning. Because of COVID, they've kind of changed their schedule, and I think to keep the crowds down, now they're doing it on a weekday. So today it was my day has been full. So I've been book shopping for my daughter, and I also had to run a couple of errands to pick up supplies for a marketing thing that I am running for my massage business. A good friend of mine is running a networking event in a couple of weeks, and she asked me to put together some things for the goodie bags that they're giving away. I went and bought some little baggies, and I'm gonna fill them with some little treats and some business cards and a coupon for massage services, and those are all gonna go in the goodie bags for that event. So I have to do that later today because I need to get these to her. No one cares what you want right now, my dear. You're so silly. So I need to get those to her. So this evening, I'm probably gonna get one of the kids to sit down and help me stuff baggies because that's what kids are for, right? So I promised that I was going to show some footage of completing that project that I cut out recently. This was that pattern that I drew and cut. And so I'm gonna do that for sure. I've already ground my pieces on the grinder. So you can see that I am grinding the edges of the glass with the grinder here. And I like to wear gloves myself when I grind because the edges of the glass after you've broken it can have some really sharp pieces on it. It just saves my hands. It's not something that you have to do. It's just something that I have learned that helps me to do. I also wear a face shield while I grind because glass does fly up from the machine and it keeps it out of my eyes. Goggles work too. I just like the full face shield because it keeps me from getting hit in the face, period, with glass. I also wear a plastic shower cap while I grind so that any little pieces of glass that might pop up into the air won't get stuck in my hair. There is absolutely nothing in this world worse than running your fingers through your hair and coming out bloody because you have a tiny, tiny microscopic piece of glass in your hair from using a grinder. So that's just a precautionary thing that I do because it means less cleanup and all in that respect for me. Some glass usually does pop out onto my shirt. There's a rug right below me that I kind of brush my glass off onto, and when I'm done working, I run my vacuum cleaner so that I can get that glass up. Because the last thing I want is the kids or the dogs or the cat or even myself to step on a piece of glass, even a microscopic one, because it can cause problems. I just ground my glass already, and it's in a little bucket of water because this is just where I toss everything when I'm done grinding it. Let me move this out of the way. It's not plugged in yet. So I have this poor towel that I will use until it literally falls apart into shreds and then I'll get a new towel. So I just dry my glass. At this point, for a project like this, I'm gonna go ahead and wipe off my numbers that I put on it. I don't really need them anyway because it's only 4 pieces, and I may not be the world's best puzzle putter together, but I think I could handle a 4-piece puzzle, and if I can't, well, I have a problem. So I put a couple of guides here to make sure that everything lines up on 2 sides, which should automatically mean that the 3rd side lines up. If it doesn't, then it means I have some more grinding to do or some more cutting to do, but it certainly should. We already know it does because I already laid it out for you in the last video, so we already know it lines up. So that's kind of a non-issue. So I used to, when I first started doing glass work, I used to rinse my glass in the sink until I realized that all that dust that's created when you are grinding glass, once you get it wet, that turns into mud, and that is terrible for your pipes. So don't put that down your sink. If you decide you're gonna try this and give this a go, don't put it down your sink. That's terrible for your pipes. It's gonna clog them up. You're gonna end up needing a plumber really soon, and nobody needs that. Nobody needs to have to mess with that. So this one also has a sticker on it that I'm gonna try to get off here now that it's soaked for a little bit. And if not, I've got some rubbing alcohol here. I'll get it off with, but surely it'll come off here. Now that it's soaked in my water, oh yeah, it's gonna come off, no problem. So the next step is to foil my glass. Now the foil, so it's copper foil. It's basically copper tape, which is what your lead solder is going to stick to allow your stained glass to become a piece that melts together. There is one other method. Oh, that about gave me a heart attack. This is real life, folks. Real life. Things fall, things drop. This is real life. This is just rubbing alcohol. That man really sprayed. Let's see if I can get the rest of this sticker off. I should have done this off camera because it's like taking time that I didn't want to spend. All right, that's good enough. I'll get the rest of it off later. It's not a hurry. So my pieces are lining up. Good, awesome. I'm gonna get this out of the way. Put it over here out of the way. Okay, so the next step is to foil these pieces. So it's basically like copper tape. Comes in rolls, it looks like this. Ideally, this is how it should look while I'm working with it. Unfortunately, I have an 18-month-old puppy who I think I'm gonna have to go let outside because she keeps barking. As I was saying, I have an 18-month-old puppy who steals my packages off my porch if I am not paying attention and don't get to them quicker than her. So, my last copper foil that I ordered looks like this. It's a terrible mess. Some of it was absolute trash and there was no saving it. This is what was salvageable, so I'm using this first. If you have dogs, you feel my pain. You've been there. So anyway, so I'm gonna start by foiling these. Now, I'm only gonna foil the edges that go together. With the exception of this top piece of glass, I'm gonna add some foil at the top edges because I need a place to attach my lead that's gonna go around the outside. So I'm gonna have to add some foil towards the top in order to pull that off. So I'm just gonna foil this edge here. I have my handy little cart here that has all of my supplies on it. Here's my solder, I may as well get that out now. This is called a fid. It's a piece of plastic that you use to burnish the foil tape to the glass. You can literally use anything you want. For a long time I used a pencil. I have a bone folder that I used for a while. I just happened to pick these up because I was at the glass store and they were a couple of bucks and I just figured why not? I was already there. I wouldn't order something special if I were you personally, just because it's not necessary. You can pretty much make anything you want work. Now, the downside of the fact that this has been all crinkled and slobbered on is that some of it has started to tarnish a little bit, like copper does. So before I start to solder, I'm gonna run some steel wool over my foiled edges just to make sure that my solder is gonna stick to my copper. That's not normally something that you have to do necessarily. I do it a lot though. It just ensures a better solder line, and I care about that. So basically what I'm doing is I'm lining this foil up, and this is so much easier when it's like on the roll and you can put it in a holder, but it won't fit in a holder in this tangled mess that I have. So I'm doing this freehand, which is much slower than I'm used to working. And it takes me a minute to like get the pieces kind of situated in my hands so that they fit the way that I want them to. Here we go. So I'm lining the foil up so that the amount of foil hanging over each side of the edge of my glass is equal. That's it. You can cut it or you can tear it. I like to cut it just because it's neater that way, but you don't have to cut it. And I push that down, then you're gonna pinch your foil over the edges. I like to kind of warm it by running my finger over it. And then, because this is a curve, and then go back through and pinch it. And then I'm gonna burnish it, which just means make sure it's sticking good, right? Nothing crazy. I think I started to say earlier the other method, so this is the Tiffany method of stained glass. This is the way that Tiffany lamps were made, and all of Tiffany products, stained glass products, were made with the copper foil method. This is not the only method. The other method is to use actual lead. And in that method, you use lead that's shaped like an H. So instead of having copper wrapped around it, the piece of glass sits inside the H on one side, and the next piece of glass slides into the slot on the other side. And then once it's all together, you solder you're soldering just the joints. And then you also have to add, you have to cement it and things like that. So there's extra steps involved. Not really extra steps, just different steps. I have messed around with a little bit of lead work. I don't mind it, but I like this better. This is just my preference, and that's largely because it's just what I'm more comfortable with, because it's what I've worked with the most. But I wanted you to know there are two options. So this time I'm gonna foil this side and this side, because these two sides are gonna need to be soldered, both sides. There's a big crinkle here that I don't like, so I'm just gonna toss that. In my jumbled mess of a non-roll. Thank you, puppy. Like I said, this is real life. All right, so I'm just gonna foil the rest of these. I'm probably gonna speed this up a little when I do my little bit of editing, so that you can not watch me do this super slowly and listen to me jabber. Now that would be something. I don't know when that stopped recording, so as I was saying, this whole how I'm going to attach the lead at the top is a little bit of an experiment, because I've not done it exactly like this before. But I mean, in truth, everything in life is an experiment, right? So you just get to be along for the ride. Aren't you lucky? I tend to just kind of fly by the seat of my pants and see what's going to work, because that's just how I roll. But we're almost there. Just wanted to get a little bit bigger piece there. Wasn't happy with my level of overlap. But now I am. That's better. I hope that's gonna give me what I want. We're gonna find out. So next step is soldering. I'm gonna get this out of my way. Some trash out of the way. Literally just throwing everything over here to the side because that makes perfect sense, right? Plug in my soldering iron. So this is a rheostat, which means that it controls the temperature of my soldering iron. It helps with the longevity of your iron overall because it helps it from running too hot or too cold. And that's important. Too cold and your solder doesn't melt. Too hot and you burn out your soldering iron really fast, which is no good. Okay, so get that out of the way. That was just to show you. So I need solder. This is 6040 lead solder. This is just a teeny tiny little bit of flux, so I'm going to add some more to that. Flux is what helps your solder bead smoothly across your piece. This is my little paintbrush to apply the flux. I have a glove that I wear when I've got pieces that I'm going to be holding in my hand and standing up and all, just so I don't drop beads of solder on my hand. Right now, this is laying flat, so I don't need that right this moment. I will put it on later if I need it. I also have a pair of goggles, because if I happen to be working with my face close to things, sometimes solder bubbles, and that's no bueno at all. Let's see. I think that's all I need. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint my flux on here. Normally I would do, on a big piece, I would do a bunch of spot solders just to hold things in place. And I'll do a couple, I'll probably do one or two of those. But since this is only a couple of seams, I'm gonna just pretty much go for it. The spot soldering thing is way more important when the piece is got a lot of pieces that are going to move around and all on you while you're working. This is so not hot yet. It's getting there. It needs about 2 more minutes. Not quite there. So, I don't even know what to talk to you about in the meantime while I wait. I should have just plugged that in sooner, huh? Just wasn't really thinking. Oh, I know what I can tell you. So the lead that I'm going to put around the edge of this for the frame, knocking things over, is this here. This is 5/64 lead cane. There's a channel in this lead. It's really, really shallow channel. I guarantee you can't see it from there. But this is going to wrap from here down across the bottom and back up to the top. So that is the game plan with that. So I'm going to solder the front and the back. I'm only going to solder to about a 1/2 inch from the edges, because once I wrap the cane around it, then I'm going to solder the rest of the way to the cane, and that is what is going to hold the lead to the piece and add strength and stability to the piece. I'm just going to set this over here out of the way for the moment. Okay, we might be hot now. Oh yeah, we're there. Okay, so I'm just going to do a couple little spot beads. So I literally just hold my soldering iron to my lead till it melts, and then I just put it down on there. It's not quite as hot as it should be. There it goes. Wiping it on the wet sponge to cool it off just for a moment, but that can be just enough to like slow you down for a second. Just kind of frustrating. I hate it when it does that. When the solder sticks to the glass. Here. I mean, I can pop it off later, because it won't stick to the glass long term. It'll literally pop right off if you catch it with your nail once it's hot, once it's cooled off. You don't ever want to touch it hot. You will regret that for a very long time. Don't do it. Don't touch it. Don't touch hot solder. So I'm literally just going to run a smoothie all the way. There's a little gap here. I probably could have filled that in with a little copper wire. I didn't. And if it looks, you know, trashy like that does, just hit it with some more flux. This actually needs more solder too. And then I'm just gonna go back over it. Stick to each other. What are you doing? Because I'm like videotaping this, my solder's being super goofy. And sometimes you can pick the solder back up off of the weird spot, like that just let me do. Sometimes it won't. You don't want to keep your soldering iron on any one place for too long because you can actually cause a heat fracture in your glass. There is nothing more frustrating than having a project almost completely done and then the glass running a big crack through it because it got too hot. Yes, it's happened. Yes, it made me angry. No, I didn't handle it well. Okay, moving on. I'm gonna go this way. Now, if you use it, some people, you can just tap it, not always get the one you do that. It's not how I think it works, so I'm going to just easier. I think it's really that way because if you keep it in, I usually tap it and there's one thing for glass. Oh, like, I'm constantly getting the solid out here, so you do it. There's something. Now I'm going to be able to do what I did do. It happens, so it became on your way. Okay, that's this side. I'm gonna go ahead and take my pins out and get rid of my guides just because I don't need them anymore. If this was a big piece with lots of pieces, I would have also pinned this side and the top just to keep everything from moving around. It's 4 pieces, it's not moving. Now I just want these out of my way. They're not a problem, they totally could stay there, they're just in my way. I'm moving them. Now I'm gonna carefully flip my piece over because remember last video I talked about how since these are all just one, that they're hinge joints. So it's possible to, as I flip this over, pull it apart, especially because it's only soldered on one side. I'm sorry, I'll get this video. For me, sorry. I'll speed this up so that you don't have to listen to it. I don't know why it wants to stick to this one particular glass so badly. That never happens. This is also the first time I've used this glass, so it's hard to say. So that's what it's gonna look like. Ooh. All right, we're not done though, because I still have to frame this bad boy. Forgot where I said it. So normally you have to stretch lead. And this is actually called Hobby Came, which is a little bit thinner, more pliable lead version of lead, and it's already been stretched. So I don't have to stretch this lead, but generally speaking, lead has to be stretched. And I am probably gonna put my glove on for this. In fact, I'm definitely going to put my glove on for this because I'm gonna be soldering near my hand and holding lead in place, and glass and solder and lead is all very hot. Normally, I kind of get an idea for how much I need and go ahead and cut it off. And that is exactly what I'm going to do. Cut it a little bit big so that I have a little extra. And here we go. Okay, so I think that's going to be my game plan right there. And then turn it. Make sure all the glass is good in that channel. By the way, after you do this, you have to wash your hands really, really well because this is lead, which is poisonous if eaten or anything like that. And I have to leave here very shortly to pick up a child. So I'm not positive I'm gonna get this finished. So, little flux. Now I'm gonna be doing a lot of like picking up little bits of solder, just tapping it into place here. A little bit. Tap it. My hand is getting hot, but it's not as bad as I was afraid it was gonna be. A little bit. This. I really should have my glove on for this piece. Because there's always a good chance of solder running, but it didn't. By some miracle, it didn't. And this side, this side is all in its place. And I'm going to that. There's time for that. So you work on that area. I'm going to go for a second. Really? Okay, don't go. Great question. Another. Here's my sauce. Well, it's not enough. Sorry. You guys know what I do. Okay, so this is about to be almost done. I'm not going to do it 100% ready because I don't have time to get 100% ready. However, maybe just see me just here. I didn't do it with glass. Okay, so I'll do that. I go around and fasten the light piece on the sun, and I clean up the sauce right here. Not crazy, I don't think that's like, not crazy. See this? All the sauce. Here, side of the glass. There we go. So it, come out. So I still have some work to do, but that is going to be basically the gist of the finished piece. So I'm pretty happy. Let me get not me behind it. So you guys see this colors. I'm going to put some hangers on these two ends. It's going to have a piece of chain to hang it from. And I think I'm going to be pretty happy with it. I will show you the finished piece here as soon as I get it done. Here is that finished piece. Look at that gorgeous
Gorgeous glint off of that glass.